Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Abroad, the teams. It's me, the Pom. I'm very happy because the mighty Rangers are in the European League final, and that's all that really matters. That's why we're here. But I've got my regular host back, the legend that is Lekdog, the man that's worshipped by middle-aged men up and down the country for his fantasy expertise. Good to have you back, Lekdog.
Fantastic to be back, Pommy. Shout out to Paolo, did a fantastic job filling in for me. But we all know his expertise remains in the commentary box, and that's where he can stay. I'm back, baby, and I'm never leaving this seat again.
Well, we are going to have you on the road. You've just told me the next couple of weeks, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about your live streaming from a public convenience on a server somewhere. But we've got the guys creeping in. It's a big game this Sunday at Marvel's 4:40 against the Crows. Rio, good day to you. How are you doing, mate? And everyone in chat and yourself, what are your thoughts on this game? Just initial thoughts before the team is finalised.
It's a good question, Pom. Honestly, I haven't thought about it that much. In my head, I feel like it's a whole new team, so I don't really think about what's happened in the past against all these other sides. But I think on paper, you'd have to say we're going to go in as favourites. We probably should win. Hopefully, I mean, thank God Lewis Young's ridiculous suspension was overturned, because I think the Crows do have some solid tools in their side. But yeah, look, I'm feeling good. I don't know, something about the performance from last week has just settled me again back into the confidence we had in the first few weeks of this show, Pom. How do you see it?
Mate, I'll do it now. 2 minutes into the show, guaranteed win, mate. Guaranteed win. I'm not concerned at all. Do you know what I mean? I think you stop Tex Walker. That's going to be the hard one. Tex Walker, he takes the marks 55, 60 outside of Carlton's 50. That is our weak area, but I expect to see TDK drop back this week. He's going to monitor that one on the counter, and I think Wheaterin will be fine with him, or Lewis Young, whichever. And I think we'll be fine. I think this game for me is Port Adelaide 2 steps up. The game plan is the same, though. They're a slower side than North Melbourne as well, foot speed wise. They are more talented, though. Carlton do what they did the week prior. They'll kick their ass, and we owe them it after what they did to Murphy's retirement game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuck Bryce Gibbs. No one cares about that, Mel. But
I'm fairly confident going into this one, Pom, that we won't be cheering off any Adelaide Crows players. I'm fairly confident.
The only way we cheer off Adelaide players is when Lewis Young just reminds the AFL he bumps who he wants. Bumps who he wants. That's all I want to say. But no, I'm confident. People seem to be a bit confident. Rio, he's a little bit concerned. Put a good fight, especially Tex Walker. Yeah, we just covered him. I agree with you. He's my only concern, really. I think we've got him covered outside that. Good evening to you, Carls. Not taking anything for granted. We've got to remain focused. You've got to remain focused, but don't worry, we'll dick him. And with this team selection, Zach Williams comes in, obviously. Stocker and Cottrell, they fell out. With the extended bench, question to the audience and the legend that is Lekdog, who are you expecting to see?
It's a great question. Expecting to see? Well, I think the teams might have actually just dropped.
I'm just going to say, it's just dropped down. So the teams, Zach Williams, Wheaterin Newman, Sard, Young, Doc, O'Brien, Cripps, Carroll, Fisher, Kerno, Martin, Owies, Mackay, Durden, TDK, Walsh and Chera, and the bench, Silvani, Bam Bam, Plowman, and my favourite and everyone else's secretly, Jack Nunes.
Jack Nunes. Shout out to Jack Nunes. So the only change there, Zach Williams in, Liam Stocker out, Matt Cottrell was the sub last week. He's now on the emergency list. Look, with Paddy Dow, Jordan Boyd, and Jesse Motlop, I'd imagine they're probably just going to make Boyd the sub again. He seems to be the go-to sub man for the Blues, which I don't honestly totally understand given how many halfback flankers we do actually have. But I think there's scope for a late out in this one as well, Pom. I've just got this sneaky feeling that we might see Jesse Motlop as a late inclusion in for this one. Over on the Crows side, out goes Brodie Smith. He's injured. Matt Crouch, who was one of the better midfielders a few years ago, has been omitted. Ned McHenry out as well. In comes Mitch Hinge onto a wing. Good for Supercoach if you held him. And Will Hamill comes in as well. Pom, I've been talking to Baron Von Crow today, who is our resident Crows expert on jockreynolds.com.au. The big fear, it seems, from Adelaide fans is that our talls are going to get a hold of their backline, because their backline's not overly sized. Jordan Butts, Tom Doedee back there. They've been throwing Billy Frampton back there as well. But, I'm hopeful that between Mackay Curnow, I'm confident that between Mackay Curnow, Martin and Jackie Silvani, we'll see quite a few goals coming through those tall marking targets for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and just firstly, big shout out to Nathan, $5 donation. Love your work up the baggers. Big game this week. Let's go. To answer your question, I think he's probably right. I think if I was them, I'd worry about their tolls. But I think the big thing for me is they've got rid of Crouch, which I think puts a lot of pressure on Scholl, Hinge, and Laird, because they're a very central team. If you look at them, they're one of the few teams in the heat maps is literally in the corridor. They play very similar to North, slow the game down, and that's mainly because of personnel. But what I would say is I think Crouch is how they hurt us. Top 20 in the competition this year for efficient disposals as well, which is a huge thing because that's one of his question marks. He pings the ball around. I think that that's a bold selection, but I think that that's laden with risk. And I can't really see a way outside of Rochelle and Dawson are the two I look at that I worry about here. Dawson for his transition. He's one of the top players in the comp this year for his ability to get scores from down the back. Outside of that, I can't see how this side hurts us because I think we are fine. Toll versus Toll. I think Cripps will be looking at this game and he'll be told right now, confirm Berry is the one that will be monitoring him. And he will be about as upset of Sam Berry tagging him as if my boss says, we've got Taylor Swift starting. You're shadowing her all week. About as worried as I would be with that.
Well, yeah, look, Ben Keys and Rory Laird are going to do what they do. They're going to get, 25, 30 touches each. It's just what, as you said, what happens after that. Jordan Dawson is a dangerous player coming off halfback. He can push up onto a wing, can actually impact the scoreboard as well. And Josh Rochelle, I think that's got a 5-goal sort of, we should have never played Plowman on him sort of situation when you go and watch the replay and you see that Plowman was never on him for those goals. I've just got a vibe that he's going to be the one that gets off the handle this week, Josh Rochelle. But outside of those two, and this isn't just to undersell Adelaide, I just think we're a better footy club in a better position right now. And our players on paper should match them and exceed what Adelaide can do in basically every quadrant of the ground. So if we play our game plan and we play how we did against North Melbourne, it should be, hopefully, a repeat of last week's efforts. And it's at Marvel again, which we've played well this year. We've had a couple of really good games at Marvel Stadium, Bulldogs, North Melbourne. So we know how to hit the scoreboard there. So I'm just excited, Pom. I'm excited to see Jack Carroll, what he can do again, named starting on the wing. And wasn't he bloody good last week?
Mate, he was fantastic. And I think as the team scrolls down at the bottom, I've stupidly forgotten the forward line, which I'll edit as we're talking. Owies, Mackay and Durden, the full forward line. But I think, like you say, I think I do have a feeling that this is a game set up for Plowman. And I'll tell you for why. We talked about him, and you do know that, yes, people are out to get Plowman. I don't know why. He was very good last week. But I think
let's be very clear. We're Team Plowman as well. I'm Team Plowman. I was being sarcastic before, everyone. I see some comments. It's all right.
I thought he was very good last week, and I understand where he gets the abuse. But I think Rochelle, as a man that has probably been Rochelle's number one fan, just outside of his mum, probably. I think this is the kind of game that Ploughman's good, because generally when you look at Ploughman historically, it's late in the game, his opposition get away from him. Where Rochelle, God bless him, he's a starter. If he doesn't start well, that's the one question mark, if I was Adelaide, I have about Josh Rochelle, is even though he's kicked goals late in games, what you actually find with Rochelle is if he's not finding the ball early, he kind of goes anonymous, a bit like where Motlop is in the VFL at the moment. So I like that matchup. I think Ploughman should get first crack at him. I think he deserves it. But then I'd like to see in the second half of that game, giving that to maybe Assad, because what you find Rochelle does, particularly under pressure and Adelaide chase goals, is he starts to get the ball on the ground. And I think Saad and him, because he's very offensive, opens up the gateway for Saad to take the game on. Because that's what Carlton have got to do here. It's the P word this week, positive ball movement. If they move it positive like they did last week, Adelaide are a weird side when you look at them statistically. They should be a lot worse than they are, because the stats don't look good at all. They look horrible, and they rely on that central contested base. Very similar to how Geelong play away from home because they play on a smaller ground. It's a nightmare to play them. So that's where Carlton have the advantage. Big shout out to Damien, $8. What a great way to start the weekend. Good chat. Nice fellas. We love you, Damien. Thank you very much. To you in the audience and you, Let Dog, what are you looking for in this game? What are you really looking for from the boys?
Oh, I think you touched on it. I think you took the words out of my mouth when you said Saad might end up switching onto a Rochelle. I think Saad's defensive game has been probably undersold given how good he actually has been this year. I know he cleans up a lot of the potential dangerous situations, but his one-on-one work has been great as well this week. We know Zach Williams back there. I want to see an attacking game from all these guys, as you've said. Lockie Ploughman last week was really attacking in how he used the ball, which was probably something we haven't seen from him in a long time. Zach Williams, we know he has that in him, but he also has the defensive game. Look at round one against Dustin Martin. So for me, positivity, attacking play, using the width of the ground, using Lockie O'Brien and Jack Carroll on the outside, Jack Nunes when he's the one floating through, because I guarantee you, I don't have the data in front of me, but if you watch how often they find targets outside of just Harry and Charlie in the forward line, those guys, it's pretty damn impressive what they can do. Lockie O'Brien specifically. And then in the forward line, for me, I'd love to see Durden and Owies. Owies, I thought, had a really good game last week. I'd love to see Durden impact on the scoreboard, because I know Motlop's pushing for a spot in the team, and he's probably at the moment doesn't have the form to keep him completely in there. I feel like his pressure's dropped off a little. And then Jack Martin-Pom, who I thought was really good last week. I just want to see more of it, more of those leading marks, more and converting, because he missed the set shot last week, but he did convert a couple of those opportunities. I just need him to keep doing that. Just keep pushing that through.
I'm with you, and I think that, like Andrew says here, do you think we'll keep taking chances every time we go into our shells, we split apart? I think last week we saw them be really positive. I thought the way they played last week, I know doing the watch along, a lot of people watching were worried about how we were playing and not putting them away. But I remember saying, I'm not bothered, because good teams play like that. They control it early, because this game is so heavily dictated to by the start you have. If you get the jump, you're chasing the game. And we've seen that as Carlton. We've won a lot of games because we've come out the block strong. But the top teams, you watch Melbourne against Hawthorn, it was a masterclass last week. They controlled the game. And there was lots of people messaging me going, oh my God, Hawthorn might win. And I was like, Melbourne are another level. Melbourne are another level. You watch them. When they're ready to go, Hawthorn can't stand them punch power. And I hope to see that again this week, because I think this is the last chance we have of perfecting that, because next week it gets considerably tougher. GWS are very good at what we're good at. They flood them areas, particularly stoppages, they flood it. So having an outside game is pivotal. And if you watch last week, GWS versus Adelaide, it was just pain. It was a death by 1,000 cuts. GWS just flooded it and said to Adelaide, sorry, guys, we're too good. And They started rotating Whitfield on the wing. This Coggy went on the wing, which I've never seen him there. They really did start to spread from that contest in the second half and really hurt them. So for me, that is important. We've got a question here from Rio. Charlie, Harry, Silvani starting to gel. You touched on this one. O'Brien and Nunes seem to hit Mackay and Kerner and pocket leads with regularity. Do you think you'll see that improve this week?
I think the more continuity you can get into the particularly the wing players that are finding targets inside, the better. I think Charlie and Harry, I wouldn't be surprised if you go back and watch the replays. Sometimes it feels like Harry's almost playing like a diversionary role, but we still seem to kick it to him. Like he's making space for other players, but we're still kicking it to him. And that's why I think Lockie O'Brien, to me, stands up, because he's the guy who's finding Matt Owies for a mark inside 50. He's finding Jack Martin. He's not necessarily just kicking it to the biggest bloke on the ground. So I think that's just a continuity thing. And, you know, it's kind of a cop-out, but you got to say it. Like Charlie Kerner has played, 8 games, 9 games in the last 2+ years. So he'll take some time, but I'm really happy with how things are gelling in that forward line. And I think it stands out more the forward structure and the going inside 50 when we're not kicking it to a pack mark of Charlie and Harry Mackay. That's a nice way to get out of trouble when you just need something to do, Pom. You just kick it to the tall blokes, they'll probably mark it. But what excites me is, when we're pinpointing targets with Matt Owies, Jack Martin or a Zach Fisher's even kicking a kind of across his body and looking out for a smaller target. So, I think that it continues to improve as we continue to develop as a team. And this is another great week to practice it before a big game against GWS next week.
Yeah, well, I went deep diving into the wing statistics. We know that I'm a little bit of a whore, should I say, for a wingman. I am in love with them. KFC wings and also froth a wing on the football paddock. But O'Brien does stack up with some of the best in the league, because what he does, he brings that. And I'm thinking that as our forward line progresses, you're starting to see them have confidence in each other's leads. This week, we had a staggering amount, and it links me to Jimmy's wonderful question. Durden needs to kick some goals. Durden was starting to run in them pocket spaces, and we started to hit pocket leads. And it was a complaint I had the week before. When do you see Carlton target a small leading in the pocket? They're starting to build that into it, and that will come from continuity. Like you say, you've got to remember the back 6 and the forward 6, I think, need to be the same as much as you can, because they feed off each other. And Durden, I could see him playing a bit of a job this week on Dawson, because Dawson, at the moment, they're scheduled to go against Jack Martin. I don't think that will be the case. I think Durden might be the guy that they think of switching to half forward and saying, you know what, this guy roams all around the ground. He's like Rory Laird when he used to play halfback. Just keep an eye on him, because once that ball hits the deck, Dawson does his magic. He's like Burn Jones when Burn Jones was good. He gets that ball out of nowhere and he hits up the corridor, and before you know it, Carlton are in pain. So I like Durden, but I think this week you're going to see he's going to have to do a job. He's going to have to do a job this week, probably on one of their dangerous ball users down back.
I think that's a good way to get him involved again. I feel like his tackling and his pressure's dropped off, and I've got to call it out because I called it out when Zach Fisher wasn't doing it. I just feel like if you're not hitting the scoreboard as in the forward line, you've got to be contributing something. And I know Durden's a love child on the channel for obvious reasons. We all love him, but I do want to see him, impacting more defensively than he is. So if a defensive role is handed to him and he can get a few more tackles, get back into that groove of creating those really high pressure act numbers, I think that's a great start, because I agree with you that continuity is super important, particularly in the forward line, particularly when we haven't had any continuity in the forward line for a few years now, because we've just had to run every man and his dog through that forward line. But yeah, he'll be one to watch. I'm particularly excited as well for another game of Jack Carroll, who was pretty outstanding and probably should have been at least runners-up, if not the winner of the Rising Star Award last week, Pom. But we know that award is not awarded for the best player of each round, so we don't need to talk about it.
I mean, the AFL corruption runs wild, because evidently this week It was for body of work, even though that the AFL rulebook in the NAB Rising Star specifies that the primary rule is for that round. Bodies of work only come in if there isn't a standout performance. Josh Gibcus, Mr. Carroll, they're probably like, Jesus Christ, what do I have to do to get a nom? But who knows? Jesse Motlop's been in the comments. I think this is a good one to talk about. I'm a big fan of Motlop and I loved what he's doing, but I still think I love the fact we're holding him back a little bit. I really enjoy that because there is elements of Jesse Motlop that do really annoy me and he's working hard on them. But I think he's a guy who, after the bye, should be ready. I think he's ready now, but I think he'll be more acquitted to do it. And I think he's something that Durden and Owies aren't. This guy is primary an excitement machine. So I can see him. I mean, I know Rio's a big fan of him. He was asking about, would we drop Martin? I could maybe see it, but Jack Martin is a specialist in every third game. He has a blinder which keeps him in it. Jack Martin is a 1 in 3 player and just so happens to be when the pressure comes on, Jack Martin kicks 3 goals. But what do you think? Do you think we'll see Jesse Motlop soon, or do you think we might hold off on him?
I'm with you. I don't mind holding off. I don't think he'll be that far away, but he's still got a lot of layers to add to his game. You know, he's still relatively raw and has got a lot of upside and a lot of potential, but it's a whole different level at the senior footy. I think there's a misconception about what sort of player Jack Martin is. I think Jack Martin's a leading marking forward, not a crumbing small forward. That's not where he's going to impact the game. So they're not a like for like for me. I could see a world where, you know, Jack Martin does come out of the team, but I don't think it's for a Motlop. So I think it really depends. If Corey Durden has another quiet game, I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see a debut from Jesse Motlop. But then again, are you going to debut him against GWS? Feels like potentially a bit of baptism by fire. I know they're not having an amazing season, but if you were going to do it, this was probably the game to do it, Pom.
Well, I mean, I think if I was Voss, I'd be looking at Motlop. I'd want to play Motlop with Durden. I think there is, but then again, I'd look at Owies and I go back to the Josh Cripps argument. A couple of years ago, he was rated as the best small forward. Simpson came out and said that he was integral to the system. And then you hear Dimmer talk about the 2017 dynasty. He preferred his small forwards to tackle. That was his primary focus. Goals were secondary, but he wanted them to create chances through pressure. So I think you might see Owies and Motlop being the primary thing. And I think if that happens, Durden's going to struggle to get back in the team because Motlop is pure X factor. And then Durden would have to go through that defensive factor. My issues with Owies and Durden is they're both strong tacklers. I don't think they're natural goal sneaks, which I do think moving forward, Jesse Motlop for me, and I'll be consistent with this, when we drafted him, he's ahead of where Eddie Betts was in skill levels. Do you know what I mean? Eddie Betts could do miraculous things, but what Jesse Motlop does, his read of the game is brilliant. It's about getting him invested in the game. His tackling's good, and he can float through the midfield, which has killed teams in the VFL. Last 10 minutes, they throw him on the ball. So while we're on the VFL, though, Damien's got this, and I want your thoughts and the audience's thoughts. Marchie returns.
It's about bloody time, isn't it? It feels like they've been saving that news because they knew that maybe some bad news in George Hewitt wasn't back was going to come through. But I'm excited it's finally happened, Pom. You know, I'm assuming he'll be on heavily managed minutes, but and it potentially changes the plans around the mid-season draft. We've been talking about the need for defensive depth, key defensive depth in that mid-season draft offline, and all of a sudden, if you add in Marchbank, I know he'll be a few weeks away at the very, very least, but you add in a Marchbank and there's one less hole in defense, and you know. Maybe that was what they were thinking the whole time, Pom. All off-season, I sort of was questioning why we didn't get that depth defender because I just didn't think we'd see Marchbank. And here we are. It's round, 8 in the AFL season, and he's getting an opportunity to play some reserves footy. It's good. It's exciting, but I'm going to be, conservative in how excited I get because we've seen this one before. Are you excited?
Mate, I'm 36 years old. It takes me a lot to get excited. I only get excited for frizzy curly hair and biceps, Mr. Kerno. But I'm excited because I think that this guy, in my opinion, when Marchbank was playing, and you got to remember he was playing in a midfield that put about as much pressure on as the French did combined in 2 world wars. Not much. He was a standout in his ability to intercept, hit the ball at its highest arc, and his ball use. So I actually think if you go back then, I was watching some Marchbank highlights this afternoon while I was nursing my hangover at work. He was a lot better than McGovern was over the first 2 games. A lot better in the terms of what he could bring. And then I was just thinking, imagine if we can get you back to this level and a little bit above. That back line, you take Newman out, you bring him in, Stocker rotates through there as well instead of Plowman all of a sudden. That back line looks hella tasty. Hella tasty. So it's raining in Frankston. I think it's an evening fixture as well. The young Paolo is commentating. He's on limited minutes, but boy, oh boy, if there is a God, if you believe in the old gods, Buddhism, whatever you believe in, pray to that God tonight, because if he can get through 3 or 4 weeks, what an absolute delight that could be.
No, I mean the talent was never questioned. It's always been the body since that first injury. So I'm with you. I think it changes the look of the team. Instead of having an extra halfback flanker playing that sort of weird defensive-y intercepty role, we'll have an actual interceptor doing it. So at senior level. So yeah, God bless. God, I just want him to be healthy and at least give us a look. Give us a look at what we've got to work with. I think that's the key.
And mate, I'm with you. And we'll finish with Little Lordy. I don't know if he's trolling me here, but he's asked for thoughts on this. 2021's gameplay was better than 2022. I'm guessing Little Lordy is David Teague's burner account.
Yeah, we found David Teague.
I was going to say,
well, there was no game plan last year, Pom.
Do you know what I mean? Not at all. I couldn't disagree more. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were bottom 3 for every major measurement in the AFL. Lee Matthews called us fraudulent because we were one of the worst ranking sides of the competition with the highest ranked inside midfielder for midfield stats. Do you know what I mean? We would get it forward at all costs. And if we didn't have Jones and Wheater in and we didn't have Harry Mackay, we would have got battered. Got battered. You've got to remember that damning statistic, 16 games in the last 2 years under Teague. Carlton were 30 down at some point, Drew level, and still lost the game. That is catastrophic bad.
And look, not to completely dismiss, because, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. But I saw that he mentioned Harry Mackay was more dangerous because he won the Coleman. But you don't necessarily want to be winning the Coleman. You want to have 2 or 3 goal guys polling highly in the goal scoring. And as we've seen this year, we've got Mackay and Kerno up there, and even Cripper on his average is up there in goals kicked as well. And that's what you want. You don't want one bloke being the only target and just out of sheer volume being the one that kicks more goals. You want a proper structured forward line and game plan so that you can have multiple goal kickers each week, which is what we've seen in all of our wins so far this year.
I would say if Carlton 2022 played Carlton 2021 with today's team as well, I won't even say it's our best 22, today's team, they'd win by about 60 goals. It would be so depressing. You'd beg for the GWS highlights to be played in 2018. It would be that bad. But predictions before we go. Everyone in the chat, give me your Adelaide predictions. Let Dog, you guaranteed a win vicariously last week and you nearly nailed it. Are you guaranteeing me a win this week?
You got to guarantee the win on the team show. Guaranteeing the win. What do we reckon? 21 points. 21 points. Not the smashing we want, but I certainly think we're gonna win with a couple of goals breathing room.
I'm going to go with Carlton by. I was nearly right because this time last week I said 70, and Paolo laughed at me and said it won't be more than 2 goals, and I got 70, and it was 50, so I wasn't far off. So I've been pretty good at this game. I'm going to go Carlton by 34.
All right, I like that. So somewhere between 21 and 34, guaranteed a win. Should be a good day. I'll be there. I'm going to about 3 games this weekend, Pom, but that'll be the last one to finish off a fantastic Mother's Day.
Oh, it is Mother's Day as well. Big shout out to all the mums, particularly the single mums, nans who do the job like my nan.
Oh, sorry.
I'm being honest.
Yeah, I know, but it didn't come off. It didn't sound that way, mate.
This isn't Tinder, lapdog. Shout out to all the mums, all the dads as well that play the motherly role. But honestly, we all come from mums. So much love to you all. Look after your mother. Look after someone else's mum. Remember, it's more fun if you don't get caught. And we'll see you this time next week. Go Blues.